It's really good to see you today.
Morning, Crystal. Oh, it's wonderful to see you again.
Yeah, so everybody is, this is my illustrator, Kat Powell, and everybody is curious about who creates these beautiful illustrations for these books. And how did I find Kat? And I talk about the process of weeding through not hundreds, but almost 100 applicants for the illustrator position and finding Kat in our process. So before we start, I just wanted you to have an opportunity to introduce yourself, what you do, a little bit more about you.
Yeah, of course. So I went to college and I graduated with a BFA in studio art, painting, and drawing back in 2010. And since then, I've just been doing all sorts of work. I've been illustrating for children's books, cover designs for like YA books, poetry books. I've also done just, commissions with my own personal artwork. And oddly enough, one of the first jobs I got right out of school, I actually did a little bit of medical illustration for a local doctor.
Mm.
So I've done a lot of like, just kind of, I almost want to say like odd jobs here and there, and they've accumulated into an art career.
Yeah, that's great. So how, if people want to find you, I mean, I'm guessing you do different types of artwork, but you do a lot of children's illustrations as well. How can they find you?
At catpowellartist.com.
Okay, great. And then
And I
I
mean,
found you through Upwork, right? So you have.
oh
Mhm.
yeah, I have a bunch of different sites that I go through. Upwork, Guru, Freelancer. So there's a few different ones that I go to. But I mean, I also have like everyone does social media now, so I have a Facebook page, an Instagram page that all have my name on it. And yeah, I mean, I'm pretty easy to get a hold of with the internet, so it makes it a lot better.
Great. And I'll put definitely put your information in the captions so that people can find you on Instagram, Facebook, and your website. So I wanted people ask about our process, and I don't know what your process is like with other writers. I just know how you and I work together. So it's a children's book series. And so the characters continue on in their journey together. And so the first book was a lot of you and I trying to figure out, what do these characters look like? I mean, they're based on my real animals, but how are they going to be, illustrated, and the type of art medium that we used, and just the style. So that was, I think, really the first book was figuring it out. And then the second book, it seemed like getting the artwork was the quickest of everything, the revisions and the edits. And that took much longer than the artwork. So, what is your process? I know, like, what I do for people who don't know, and I don't know how it is for other writers that you work with, Kat, but I have the rough draft. And in my rough draft, I have the description of what I would like for the illustration to look like, a rough description, and then Kat creates something incredibly magical. So what is your process once you get my manuscript?
So you made it a lot easier because sometimes I'll get people where they just have a very general idea in their head. They don't have so much like character design or anything to work off of. So in some instances, I have to just like fully just start off with like full imagination, trying to figure out what they want. And we kind of did go through that where we were
Mhm,
trying to find more of the style. Like character design was a little easier because it's based off of your adorable pets.
mhm,
But essentially, once I read through like any descriptions and pretty much the basic of the story, I just start sketching up how the characters would look. Usually, I kind of like already adding them into the story, like working on like each page, almost like storyboarding, and kind of see how the characters would interact with each other. Because that's usually how you get their personality is having
mhm,
them interact with something instead of just, standing there, like just being kind of like a boring character sheet, just standing.
mhm,
So for you with the dogs, it was so much easier to have them interacting and doing all of
mhm,
the, I guess you can kind of say like obvious mannerisms of dogs
mhm,
and cats and just having fun with like their little expressive eyebrows and
mhm,
stuff like that. But in general, I start off with sketches. I work back and forth with the author to make sure that I try to get closer and closer to their vision. The sketch phase always takes a while. And then after that, it's a little bit easier. I go through, I redraw everything with like clean lines, details, and then I start working on the colors. And usually, most children books nowadays, they want digital artwork. Nothing wrong with that. I love digital. It
Mhm.
I don't have to go through as much supplies. But yours was a little different because we went
Mhm.
to watercolor. So there was an extra step where we planned out all the colors digitally, and then we went through and
Mhm.
did the watercolor. So that way I wasn't putting down something that you did not like. And it's like, well, it's there. Can't undo
Yeah.
it. Can't press delete. So that's kind of
Yeah.
the basic idea.
Yeah. And I will tell you, when we first went through, like I didn't know anything about digital versus anything else other than I knew what I liked. And the digital that you did for the first round, even for the second round, when we were, playing with colors, they're really good. But when you
Oh,
go
thank you.
from digital to your watercolor, it's something that's it's so phenomenal. It's like it's art. Like, and what I remember telling you at the very beginning, I wanted the kids to experience feeling like they were walking through your personal art gallery. And they do. It's like even the grown-ups will look at the book and like, oh my gosh, this artwork is phenomenal. Like I know. Like, how did you
Oh,
find her? So it's like there's something magical about the traditional handwork that comes alive in the stories with the illustrations, I think.
well, that's
It's
great to
just like,
hear. And it it could be from whenever I was learning how to draw, I did it kind of traditionally, physical artwork, pencil drawings, ink drawings, where because whenever I first started, I don't think Photoshop was the way it is now.
mm,
Uh, so I anytime I made a mistake, it was something I had to either learn how to fix or just have to deal with and see if I could like hide it and change it
mm,
to have it fit in the image. So it could be from just having that kind of traditional learning experience where you become a bit more confident with your work and you know how to make colors and designs and characters work faster and work better because you don't really have kind of handicap of like being able to just delete a layer with like digital artwork. You can like uh, undo so many steps and then go back to where you were. While I don't know, it's just a different type of frame of mind whenever you're doing traditional
mm.
because there's something more permanent about it.
Yeah, right.
uh, yeah, so I just think I think it's wonderful to hear that people are loving it because it's rare to do traditional children's books, mostly because it's a bit more time consuming
Mhm.
to go through the process.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the things as well that how do you do this piece where you are able to show emotion with all of the characters, even the side illustrations? So we have what's called spot illustration. So we've got the main illustration on one page is just full illustration. And then on the opposing page is the text. And on the text page, there's the spot illustrations of different like side characters, I guess, little bees and mice and different things. It you have with the main characters as well as the little side characters a way of showing emotion in the facial expression that I don't always see in other illustrations. Like you can look at them and pick up on what you don't even have. The magic about these books is you don't a child can pick up the book and not even know how to read, but get the story because the illustrations carry the story so well. And you can see, almost feel what the animals are feeling in each illustration. How are you able to do that?
Short answer, I'm not sure.
Yeah.
uh, I mean, I think it's just whenever I was growing up and my parents would read children's books to me, because whenever I was younger, always loved it whenever my parents would do like silly voices. So I always wanted them to read it. And I just remember some of the stories that we had, it was like Goosebumps. And there was another one where it had something to do with like a snake in a toilet. I don't remember. The title was probably something like that. Like, oh no, I found a snake in my toilet. And I just remembered the covers had so much expression, so much detail. And I mean, I know there was some other like classically illustrated children's book I had whenever I was little that had expressive little characters. And I think maybe subliminally, I just wanted to have that because I mean, you could have a picture of a really cute dog, like a really cute cartoon, but it's the expression that really draws people in. I mean, yeah,
Mhm.
dogs are cute, but it's those little tiny things where they have like the little smile, the little upturn. And I want people to be able to smile whenever the character is smiling or cry whenever the character is crying. So it's very important to make sure it goes all the way through. So I don't know if it's because I grew up looking at all of these images where the characters had so much expression,
Mhm.
or if it's just, I don't know. I really want people to just get something out of my artwork. So I
Mhm.
try really hard to make the expressions follow through so you can capture the full moment, if that makes sense.
Yeah, because you can look at the picture and like, oh, Gracie looks like she's trying to be brave, but she's actually scared. Like you can tell, like that one section where like, I think I've got this, but I'm not sure. And then the triumph. But then when Charlie's talking about when he was homeless, like the characters look so sad and worried. So you've got the nuances of happy versus joyful versus excited versus, scared. So all these layers of emotion that you can look at it with just the eyes and the, like you said, the little details. You just feel what the character's feelings. Almost, I feel like I'm wondering if you become like an actress, like, okay, I'm going to be Gracie for this moment. And what is Gracie feeling in this moment? And then you create that as you're feeling it.
Actually, it's funny you mentioned that because,
Mhm.
and I know I'm not the only artist who does this, but whenever I'm going through and I'm drawing something, like I will make the facial expression. So
Okay.
like whenever Hope is crying, I'll go like, ah. Whenever, Gracie is like joyful and triumphant, I'm like smiling. And so if you ever notice an artist drawing a character and there's an expression, like if you ever watch like the classic Disney artists, like the 2D animators, they're sitting there drawing up and they'll have the same expressions as the characters. So yeah, in a way, I'm kind of doing the same thing. And I don't know like why artists do that. I think it's just like how we can understand the expression is to embody it. Yeah,
Yeah. And it's almost like when you embody it, that feeling goes onto the page. It's kind of
I
interesting.
think so
It feels
too.
kind of woo-woo, but it's like you feel it, it goes onto the page, and when the person opens it up, you feel it. When you're looking at the character, you feel it. Like what I love about the stories is when I go into the schools and do the social emotional learning, I get to the
Yeah.
one page in the first book with Hope, and she's a caterpillar and Samantha's going to squish her. And everybody's looking on in horror. The kids, like, what's going on here? Oh, that, they go on into detail about all of the feelings and thoughts that the characters are experiencing based on their facial expressions because it's so rich, and even their body positions. And the other thing, I just recently told you this, what's magical about these books is they're really for any age. I have adults that read it and say, this is really for grownups too, because of the lessons. And of course, when you're
Aw.
in elementary school, fourth graders and fifth graders, like, I'm too grown up for a children's book. So, right, I get that. So I can't go in there and do a children's book, a regular lesson like I could do with the first and second graders, and have to pivot. And I had to do this last minute, like, okay, this is a tough school. This is a tough community. These kids are not going to be vulnerable enough to be with me in a children's story. So we went through it. We used both books actually. It did it all through the framework of art appreciation. And we would look at the illustrations and I would ask the kids, what is happening? And I'm going to read the text, but what is happening in this picture? And how are you? And they're like, oh, it's a scary picture. Well, how is this picture creating fear? And the one I loved using is the one with the schoolhouse, where
Mm.
so the second book for everybody is all about fear, rational fear, irrational fear, and then that spidey sense that you get when something feels off. And so the illustration I'm talking about, they're talking about, well, what about when Samantha went to a new school and she was really afraid? And so the way you did the illustration with the school, the kids looked at it like as if we were at an art gallery, where people are like, oh, do you see this and this and this? And they picked it apart in a sense of, oh, it's the, the cloudiness in the back. The school looks like it's reaching to Samantha, like it's going to get her. And the top part looks like teeth. And all the details that I'm guessing you intentionally put in there, the kids really brought it out, stuff that I didn't even really notice. I noticed when I look at the picture, I feel afraid. I don't feel afraid, but I can feel the foreboding. And so the kids were able to discuss and point out specifically what is about that piece of art that creates that feeling of foreboding. And then we went from there to then, how do you write this without just like, show me, don't tell me? And we would
Yeah.
have them create, like, not necessarily the text, but have them create their own little story. And it was really cool because they got the lessons without me reading the story. They got all of the lessons about fear, because when we did the activity at the end, the activity really demonstrated to me that, they discussed in their activity their irrational fears and their real fears.
Oh, that's
So it's
really
like
interesting.
it's going through the back door. So they still got the important pieces, they got the lessons, but they went through the back door to get them. So yeah, it was really, really cool.
That's good because I know whenever it comes to art, I had someone say that what you want to do, and I think this is also maybe now that I'm thinking about it, the reason why I love adding so much little detail. Someone said the trick with art is not so much having just a beautiful piece where people, like if you're in a gallery, they just walk right by, just they don't even like, they give it a glance and they keep going. What you want to do is get them to stop and stare and find all the details or find that emotional connection. And I'm really glad that the all the students were able to understand that whenever it comes to like depicting like a scary scene, there's so much that goes into it, from not just the character design of the actual characters, but like the sceneries. And I mean, I have to harken back to Disney, and I know there are some other animation studios, like with did you ever see the movie Brave Little Toaster?
No, I did not.
Did you ever see that? Brave Little
No,
Toaster, the movie?
nope.
It's like an old cartoon movie where they went through and they really made the scenes quite scary, and yet it was still a cartoon. And they did it through like color theory, character design, that whole thing.
Wow. Yeah, and you did that. And so you're with that being dark, with it's all about fear, and it really delivered that. And what I loved was when I was, doing the lessons with the fifth grade classroom, we would have the current book, the one about fear, Braveheart Gracie, and your illustrations up, and really looking at like, what is it about this particular illustration that evokes fear and the nuances of it. And since it's a series, then I had the first book and we would compare. So there was a scene with, when Hope is remembering when she almost got squished as a caterpillar by Samantha. And we compared those two pictures together. And, in this one, Samantha's foot was a lot bigger and it was dark in the background. And so then I was able to then use that into another lesson of, when we fear something, we often make it bigger than what it really is. Or when we have a memory about a fear, if it doesn't go untreated or we don't manage it, our memory seems so much worse than reality. And then even the picture with Princess Penelope on the fence when Buster's, growling at her. It's like, oh my goodness, he looks so much bigger and more muscly and more vicious in the fear picture than he does in real life. And then how you had the scenes with how dark it was in the sky. So all those nuances, it just really created this feeling that you were able to just evoke from looking at it, but then picking apart each piece. I'm like, oh yeah, I didn't notice that either. I didn't notice that. But the kids found all these tiny little details that added to the whole element of what, like, oh yeah, Kat intentionally put all that in there. And when I look at it as a whole, then I I feel it. And then as I look deeper, I see how you did that intentionally, which is really cool.
Oh, good. Because I know whenever you're kind of working on it and we're kind of going back and forth with the images, like whenever I share them, sometimes it's kind of information overload. And I know probably the first time we were going through, like, we were considering so much detail, so much information, that I'm kind of glad to know that, there's some detail that you're still picking up on and that the kids
Mhm.
are all like, I see it.
Yeah, it is
So, I mean,
so cool.
kids, yeah, and I think kids are way more observant than what we give them credit for. I mean, they notice such little things, nuances, and I think it's pretty cool that they were able to catch everything that I put in.
Yeah, and they had so much fun with it. And that's what I love about it is that, the whole purpose is for them to get lessons. But if they can get lessons from a different way, it doesn't matter as long as they're getting the lesson and they're having fun.
Yeah.
And then they're getting that piece of, okay, let's look at when we go to a gallery, how do we look at art from this framework? Like you said, instead of just walking by, really looking at what is it that the artist is trying to say here. So it gives them that whole element of knowledge as well.
Totally.
So, well, Kat, this has been so much fun. It's such a pleasure to work with you. And I can't wait for our next book together to see what else that we create and put together. But yeah, it's such a pleasure. And it's such a pleasure talking to you. And everybody, every time I go to a school, they want to know all about you. Who is the illustrator? What is her name? Where does she live? How does she do this? How did you meet her? Are you friends? And yeah, it's just really neat.
Yeah.
So your art definitely carries you with me everywhere I go, even though you're not there physically.
Aw, that's
Mhm,
so sweet. And I'm
mhm,
so grateful that I was able to meet you and be more than just like a work kind of thing, that we get to know each other and
mhm,
become friends. And I I always appreciate you so much. And every single time, like, I know we've only worked on 2 books,
mhm,
but I'm always so thrilled at how in depth your stories are and how much
mhm,
they kind of like this one evolved as we were working on it, where you started to consider like different aspects of like the whole fear thing and wanting to expand upon it. And it really helped. And I know Paige also helped to kind of make sure that the story made
mhm,
sense as we went, and adding in those little extra information and details, kind of
mhm,
giving some concepts a bit more space to breathe. I think we made a really wonderful book, and I always
mhm,
brag about you. And
mhm.
I just can't wait to get this book in my hands. I'm so
Mhm.
excited to see it in person. I
It
just cannot wait.
it is. It's a fun book to hold, and you're right. And there was just so many things about how do we make this work, and it became this really long book. The kids were like, this could be a chapter book." I'm like, I know it's costing me a fortune, to make this book come alive, but it was so amazing. And how we then like, how do we cut, make a different page from this? Do we put, because I had a lot of stuff in one page and like, okay, we need to break up these pages. And then you had this great vision of let's do the memories, because there's a lot about what they think about and the memories. Put these two together since they're outside memories, and these two together because they're inside memories, and how you just made it work to so seamless when people look at the book. You don't even notice, you don't even think about all of probably the planning that went behind it, and then how we shifted things to do this and that. I will have to tell you, this is a funny story. So you capture my emotion, the personalities of my animals so well. So I have the author's proof. And Gracie in the story is such a drama queen. And she goes to the vet. And if you want to cut her toenails, they have to put a muzzle on her. And she screams and she cries. And you would think you were killing her. It's like this whole scene. So the last time I went to the vet to get her toenails clipped, because I can't do it, they had to take the book and show everybody, because look at this. This is what she does. It was like such a hit. So yeah, it's a
Aw,
lot of fun. So, well,
poor
thank you so
Gracie.
much. I know it's funny. So, thank you. It's so fun talking to you, just to talk to you, and rather than talking about illustrations and getting the book to print, and also for
I
everybody,
know.
Kat is the mastermind that takes her art and puts it into a form where these companies then make it into a book. And I have no clue how she does it. I don't even want to know. I don't want to learn, because there's different things with, the trim and all of that, that's, I think, so complicated, and you just take care of it, and we get this beautiful book. So yeah.
Well, remember, Crystal, none of this would have ever happened without you. So I would say you're the mastermind. I'm just helping.
Well, thank you. Maybe a mastermind with a lot of helpers. That's for sure.
Yeah, it's definitely a team group.
It's a team approach. So thank you so much, Kat. And I'll put all of your information in the captions, but Kat Powell, what is your website? Kat Powell Artist or?
Yeah, Powell Artist. Yep.
.com, right? CatPowellArtist.com. And
Yes.
she's on Instagram, she's on Facebook. So phenomenal artist. I before I ever hired Kat, I went through her website and looked at all of her art, and it's phenomenal. So she does more than children's books. Paige calls you. Paige is the other person on her team. She calls children's illustrators the Michelangelos of the current time, because many artists back in the medieval time and the Renaissance time, their art got seen because they would paint them in churches. And the children's book are the churches where phenomenal artists really get their work out there. And she likens you to Michelangelo. So, well, thank you so much, Kat. And you have a beautiful day, and we'll look forward to talking to you again soon.
Always love talking to you, Crystal. I'll see you later, okay?
See ya. Take care.
Bye.